And it's brought to you by guess who, John? Tito's Handmade Vodka. So what are we looking? What are we looking forward to? Let's make a list here of people we're looking forward to seeing when we go to. But we got a checklist. We go with things to watch for. You know, we're not out there just glad handing. We're here to work. Okay.
I like bullshitting a little on the side, but I can't lie. I've been.
It might be my favorite part.
Yeah, I've been doing it pretty consistently for going on about 13 years now. I would say obviously the quarterback. I mean, that's number one, no questions asked. And not necessarily Jimmy. Like, I've seen Jimmy, I know what I'm getting. I'm expecting a pick. I'm expecting some Jimmy rolling with the ones. But today it's Trey Lance is clear number one. To me, number two, a guy that I lived with for a little bit in college, his girlfriend used to call me Judging John. She always thought she's judging John. She always thought I was judging people. And I'm like, and then I turned my career into a scout, and now I talk about people with my opinions.
Ain't wrong.
She kind of nailed it. And one thing scouts and front office people do, and they can only really tell their other scouts, and definitely like probably the owner with the GM, is they do a lot of judging of the coaches, right? Of the assistant coaches. And just because you scream or just because you don't scream, if you've been, it's like this in high school football, college football, and the NFL, it's no different. You can't judge a coach just by the way he talks, right? How loud he is, how loud he's not. Whatever, Robert Saleh was jumping all over the place. I bet if you went to a Patriot practice, Belichick never gets that loud, right? But, you just are going to watch a guy who is now in charge of the defense. And that is a position, I would say, typically, like most guys aren't like Belichick. It is a more aggressive side of the ball, right? Where just that coach, I would say Fangio wasn't as loud, but you felt his presence. The Ken Nortons, Del Rios, they were pretty loud. Saleh definitely was on the high end, right, of the energy. You just felt him at practice. He was always, and he would be high-fiving offensive. Like, he was just involved. Right. I'm just fascinated, just to watch D'Amico be the guy that, he's got a walkie-talkie or he's talking to Fred. He's the man in charge.
Right. Which he was as a player, right? It's not the leadership, but as a player, I don't think it was ever said that he was like the big rah-rah guy. But I think the beauty of this, right, is that he's been in the building. They know what to expect of him. And I don't think, to your point, no one's saying he's got to be that guy. He just has to be himself, and the question is, does it work? I think, you think about judging, we judged hard. You remember the assistant coach we went to practice probably 3-4 years ago now, and we're like, are they listening to this guy? Right, he's running around. I remember watching.
Did you start that? And I got on board.
It was me. Yeah. Yeah. Jeff Hafley was the DB coach, the secondary coach, and I remember watching him talk to Jimmy Ward. I think it was. I'm like, I don't think they're listening to this guy. He's running around high five. I'm like, I don't think they're listening. Well, it turned out they like him, and it turned out the Niners like him, and then it turned out Ohio State liked him, and then it turned out he's a head coach at college football now. He's fast.
He's pretty high level guy.
He is. I've watched him on the thing that they do, ESPN, the college football, where they've got the championship game. They have a couple coaches. I think he's been on that. I'm like, God, I like this guy. Watched a couple of his press conferences. I like him.
I'm rooting for him.
Same.
Yeah.
Plus, it makes that story funnier. But that's a good one. D'Amico Ryans. I like that, John. I'm going to go. I think another obvious one is not necessarily how he looks in practice, but just does he practice A or B? And if so, does he walk off healthily? That's Nick Bosa. But I'm going to go Ambry Thomas. I mean, I think one thing we've talked about a lot is depth at wide receiver. You've got two clear cuts, Ayuk and Debo, and then what next? Is it Sanu? Is it Richie James? I could say, let's go watch the battle for the third receiver thing, but I'd rather see Ambry Thomas lined up against good receivers and see how he hangs, because I think for this team, we've talked about it for a few years now, they've been trying to find that guy at corner. The Jason Verrett thing really worked out, but you can't necessarily plan things that way. And I think if he can really be a starting corner for this team quick, they use draft capital on him, I think it's a big deal. So that's a guy I can't wait to see.
Yeah, I mean, to me, when the pads come on, one position you can really feel a little bit more are running backs, right? Just because you just pads start popping, the line of scrimmage is kind of being set, right? I mean, that first two steps from both sides of the ball, probably not quite like a game because they are your teammates, but it gets pretty physical, especially newer guys on both sides of the ball. If you're Aaron Banks, if you're a defensive lineman trying to make the team, how do Elijah Mitchell and Trey Sermon, like, how hard are they hitting the hole? Because if they are hitting the hole as well as I think it's gone in this offseason, like, those guys are going to play a shitload. If you told me that the combination, if the Niners running game is what Kyle envisions it being, is it crazy to think like those two could combine for 9-10 touchdowns? One guy 4, the other guy 6, or something like that.
No, fives? I mean, look, I think so.
Because
running backs get hurt.
They don't really use him to carry the ball that much, right?
Use check, yeah.
Yeah.
We've just seen over the years, there have been opportunities for a lot of guys in Kyle's offenses with the 49ers because guys get hurt. So, yeah, I don't think that's crazy at all to find,
because also, if you think about Mostert, he's clearly, they got to get him to games. Was I think, a problem last year. And I saw Kyle when he talked after practice on Friday, I think. And he said, they asked him, like, well, are these guys already your starting running backs? He's like, well, we're not going to ask Mostert. Like, we know what we've got there. We have to keep him healthy coming into the season. To me, not that he can't, but he's more of a 20-20 running back just because of his speed, his ability to hit big plays. When I get to the, not just the red zone, but I'd say 10 and in, I like the two rookies running style a little more than him, right? Especially Sermon. The way he's built, the way Elijah runs. Like, I think those guys, the fantasy guys are always big on, like, if you follow a bunch of them on Twitter, things that are said during camp, because they tell a lot. Like, we love this guy in the red zone. We love this guy on third down. And the Niners, because they have so many running backs, are always a tough team to figure out fantasy-wise. They do have specific roles, though, I would say, in Kyle's offense they like Fred Wilson, I'd say the last couple of years, Jeff Wilson down by the goal line. 7 touchdowns last
year. Yeah, 3 in a game, but.
But you just pick guys that you feel like their skill set translates to, like, ideally, if you have like a McCaffrey or a Zeke or whoever, like, he just gets all the Dalvin Cook. But the Niners, like, they operate a little differently. And I think one of these guys can really establish himself. Like, we get within the 10-yard line, like, we're handing this guy the rock when they're in goal line defense. Because I would say goal line defense, like, if I'm at the 3-yard line, right, and it's 2nd and 3 or 2nd and goal, like, Mostert probably isn't my running back I'm going to. And I'm a Mostert fan. Like, if it's 1st and 10 at the 50, like, I'm running sweeps and running zone stretch plays for him. I get to the, inside the 5-yard line. I hopefully one of these two guys, like, this is my guy. Yeah. Slam it.
Well, I think if anybody hasn't seen, just go to YouTube and pull up Elijah Mitchell highlights, and you'll see, like, a style of running back that
he feels like he might be the guy.
Looks like a Kyle running back. I think a lot of these are always, like, trying to answer questions. But this is sports. I want to be entertained. Brandon Ayuk, like, I don't have any questions about Brandon Ayuk. He's going to have a huge year as long as he's healthy. Maybe that's the only question is he healthy all year? But I just want to watch him because he's sweet. Like, I just want to have we'll see. We're going to be there for 2 days. We're going to see Brandon Ayuk do some cool shit. Like, that's guaranteed.
And listen, this is more of like a passion project to keep an eye on this guy. But it is kind of crazy that this guy's career could just be over if he's cut. Is Josh Rosen. Like, did this guy go from the 10th overall pick? And everyone talked about him in draft. You know how big quarterbacks are in draft circles. He was one of the more famous college quarterbacks for several years. But wasn't his freshman year where, like, is this guy going to be the number 1 overall pick in the draft? Yeah. And it's just, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility if by the middle of this training camp, he is the 4th quarterback. Like, Sudfeld's beat him out, and who knows? Like, the Niners are going to keep 3 quarterbacks. Maybe they do. And they don't keep Josh as one of them. Like, is it over? Now, I know he might get a practice squad gig or what, but it's just he is never going to play in the NFL.
In terms of, like, really competing, having an opportunity to be a backup, which, was kind of when he got to San Francisco, that's part of what it was. Been a lot of places. Yeah, feels like it. He was drafted in 18, so this is 18, 19, 20, 21. This is year 4.
We've seen a lot of fall from graces with, like, high second-round picks that are famous, right? Like a Kaiser, a Hackenberg, a name, but he's drafted 40th, right? And just within 3 or 4 years, it's clear. This has to be, in our time doing this, and I would say definitely just this past post-Jamarcus Russell kind of crumble, one of the quickest top 10 picks at quarterback to just be done. Like you said, 2018. That's nuts.
What makes it so unique is
he was the 10th pick, not pick 30.
What makes it so unique is that his team drafted a quarterback, not just in the first round, but at number one the next year.
Yeah.
Right. That's what makes it. That's what helps. I think it's not like he was under
you're
normal
right.
circumstances. You'd be in Arizona for at least 2-3 years, right?
It accelerated the process for sure.
But for it to go from, well, maybe the Cardinals, okay, they just had to pick Kyler, to no, he's not the back. He can't even be the backup somewhere else. That part's pretty crazy.
But it's hard. Like if I told you the other 4 guys, right, had been in that position, it feels like clearly they all would have found themselves in a spot. Like of the 5, beside Josh, Lamar and Josh, it went really, really well. Baker turned it around relatively quick once he got a real head coach. Sam is probably the worst of those 4. And boom, he was so much better. And he's obviously more athletic, drafted a little higher, but like he clearly right away, like someone was going to make him the starter when the Jets punted on him, right?
Yeah. And even Baker was fine as a rookie.
Yeah.
I mean, better than fine, probably.
Honestly, it feels like the league just, if you just poll a random executive, what do you think of Josh Rosen? I think most of them immediately come back like, yeah, he's just not any good.
Yeah, why? Again, you're not talking about a guy who's going to be your backup quarterback. And even if it weren't for Trey Lance, I don't think he'd be in that position.
But, Guy, the thing is, I don't think he's a backup quarterback in the NFL. So he's not even a top 64 quarterback in the league. Isn't that pretty nuts? He can't be the 64th quarterback in the NFL, and we know how terrible they are.
It's wild.
It's sad. I just watched. I consumed. I know you did too. So much of his career at UCLA, and I'm not like holding on for dear life because I was wrong. I thought I loved him.
I know.
Loved was wrong. I thought he was a really good player.
I know there was so much. If it ends, part of that story is that he was never in one spot for long. Never could stick with a coaching staff, with a team, but. It's hard to identify. Is that a reflection of just the places he's been? This is a pretty stable place to be, the San Francisco 49ers.
And I think we've seen some Pac-12 quarterbacks, like Leinart and Sanchez are guys that careers kind of ended quickly, and accelerated to the end fast. But it felt like we saw so much more of those guys than Josh's career. He just had his one rookie year on one of the worst team in the league, and then it just ended.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easier when the guy's a starting quarterback for a few years, and you just get to watch it and go, okay, this is what it is. This is what he is. Good pro, whatever. But you never really even got to do that with him.
No.
I mean, Sean Mannion's still in the league. Sean Mannion was a good college player. But
not. I mean, no one would have picked Sean Mannion over Josh Rosen, right, in college.
No.
Sometimes it's better if you're not a starter to just never play and just chill.
Totally. But you got to win the backup job, though.
You got to win the backup job, so you clearly got to get in with an offensive coordinator / head coach, and then just be the backup for a while and pray that guy never gets hurt. Because the moment you get thrust to like Chase Daniel, and you're like, oh wait, this guy actually is terrible, then you just get out of the league. Like no one will touch you. But if you can just be Mannion, like when's the last time Mannion played a real game? Like I don't even know, and like no one even knows. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, 11 years in. Barkley kind of did that for a while. Like he just got on the backup train. He never really had to play, even though he had played a little and it was clear he wasn't good enough. But then like everyone forgets, and you just get to be the backup.
Yep.